We're doing depth chart breakdowns across the entire front seven, edge room, interior defensive line, and linebackers all today.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Now, we're going to do some weekend shows to keep up with the depth charts and the breaking down the Big Ten rankings and whatnot. We're going to keep doing the depth chart breakdowns. I want to get through all the Gophers rooms so you are prepped and ready for North Carolina week this week, but we're going to scrap the Big Ten rankings for now because I want to make sure we have time to get through each of the rooms. So today we're going through three rooms: the edge rusher room, the interior defensive line room, and the linebacker room. So we got a whole lot of Gopher talk when it comes to the depth chart, the upsides, the potential rotations. And I know that's what the Gopher fans want to hear most. So we're jumping in today. So sit back, relax, hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of your daily Gophers content moving forward. Now, later this week, we're also going to have our prediction show with Tristan Spanford back on here. So get ready for that one. And I just appreciate y'all for listening. We're going to be ready and locked and loaded for you all season long. And one thing I did want to mention, so we had the media tasting the other day, and I got to tell you, some of the foods that are going to be this year in the stands and whatnot, or at the different vendors in the stadium, look, you got some things to try for sure. My number one favorite item from that media food tasting was the burritos. That's right, pho in a burrito. It might sound like, whoa, how do you make that happen? But I'm telling you, I guarantee you try this bad boy. If you like pho, and you try this burrito, it's for real, is what I'm trying to say to you. It has a nice hint of spice. It was a new creation that they are just trying out for the first time. And let me tell you, they hit it out of the park. So the Lotus is the vendor. It'll be in section 145. You're definitely going to want to check out the burrito. And if you're looking for something sweet, I recommend the apple fries. The apple fries were... chef's kiss. Like, I'm just telling you right now, I liked that one a lot. I like the buffalo chicken street tacos. There's just a lot to get out there, a lot to try, and a lot of new items for you to try as Gopher fans. So those were my top three that I would definitely recommend, absolutely, with the burritos. Shout out to the Lotus in section 145. So hopefully you'll give them a look and get there every single game, every single home game. Go check them out. Support the local businesses that are in the stadium, and be sure to buy Duck beer and other things as well to support your Gophers athletes with the collective and Dinkytown athletes. Now let's talk about the defensive line. We're going to talk about the edge rushers first. Now the starters in this case, absolutely Jaw Joyner, Danny Sturgout. These two started last year and they did a lot of work. And on top of that, they're looking to produce even further this year. So you talk about Jaw Joyner, a redshirt senior, the highest upside on the defensive line, in my opinion, from 2024. Now, Ja he's had a rapid development since 2021. That season, he solely played in the bowl game and notched his first career sack. Then you go from there to 2022, where he had 1.5 sacks, but he had a ton of pressures on the season. And then he was just not able to get home and complete the sacks. But then you head to 2023, you head to new defensive line coach Winston DeLatibadier, and that rapidly changed as he got home on 7.5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. But you can see he is just scratching the surface. It's why many people believe he could be the first Gopher to hit double-digit sacks since 2008. So I'm really looking forward to Jaw Joyner, possibly the highest upside on the entire defense. Now, the next player to talk about is Danny Sturgout. Like I said, he's going to be a starter for sure. Another redshirt senior, another defensive end who just grinds and he works and he does everything that is asked of him. And that's the type of players you absolutely love to see on the field, and they always find their way onto the field. Now, in 2022, he had 20 total tackles with 3.5 sacks, but then he stepped it up. Again, Winston DeLatibadier in that room for the first time in 2023, and I feel like all the defensive linemen really just took a little step, it clicked, and all of a sudden you're seeing more production. But Danny Sturgout's production was impressive. He had 50 total tackles and 6 sacks. Now, 50 total tackles for a defensive lineman is heck of impressive. So I was super impressed by his production there, and I hope he can continue to build on it. Now, with those two leading the way, with Winston DeLattiviere as the coach, again, for the second straight year, you can look for more finer detail elements to start to rise and shine. And that means maybe getting home on a bit more sacks. That means maybe cleaning up, stopping the run game shorter on a few yards, getting more tackles for losses. I really look forward to what those two can do in year 2 of Winston DeLattiviere as the defensive line coach. They could really take it to another level. Now, when you talk about the rotation on the edge room, it's still a ton of production, or not a ton of production, a ton of talent, a ton of potential is what I was looking for there. Anthony Smith, the redshirt sophomore, last year, I thought it was going to be his breakout year. But this offseason, Anthony Smith has talked about wanting to build his confidence, wanting to be more of a leader, and you can see that. You can feel that presence. And this fall, you've seen it and then some. I'm actually really intrigued to see what happens with that evolution and what it'll look like on the field heading into 2024. But getting beyond Anthony Smith in the rotation, that's where things get a little bit interesting when it comes to these defensive end prospects for the 2024 year, because a lot of people want to see Jackson Howard, but I'm not sure he's going to be the starter or the quick rotation, the second man up in the rotation, at least to start off the year. I think that person could be Lucas Finnessy. He keeps having moments of heavy flash within the fall camp. He had some in the spring as well. He plays with speed. He plays with violence, which makes me think that he can be a true factor at some capacity in this Coach Heatherman defense. He's a former linebacker, now an edge rusher, and that speed is on display with him. He gets creative. He has some bend to him, but he has the tenacity and the ferocity that he plays with, and that's what can help keep him on the field. So he's been playing the same role as Danny Strigal and doing that role with the twos and looking pretty strong there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some rotation, especially early on in the year. Now, maybe Nate Becker could be a player in the rotation. I've seen him working with the twos on occasion in the fall camps. I saw it in the spring a little bit. We saw it a little bit last year as well. So he has found his way into twos reps in both the spring and occasionally in the last 2 falls, but this team trusts him to contribute, and if called upon, I think the only thing really holding him back is the upside or the athleticism or the burst. But as long as he plays clean, he could start with a small role on this defensive line. But as the young guys start getting stronger and it starts to click a bit on the field and that IQ and where to be and the speed and whatnot, once that starts clicking, his role could possibly disappear. But he is a guy that maybe could see some snaps early on in the season. Now, my player that is a wild card with upside, if he can get on the field, is Jackson Howard, the redshirt freshman. A ton of upside, a ton of potential. And the coaching staff has already discussed how they love his leadership. They love his hustle. They love his mentality that he brings to the field. And seamlessly, he fits the culture. Now, he may not be a starter right away. He may not start with a rotation role right away. But as he is still getting warmed into the system, I think as he comes along by mid-year, I would not be surprised one bit if he has earned his way into the rotation and potentially shrank the role of a Finnessy or a Becker and being Danny Strigal's direct swap. I think he could be that next man up as the season goes on. But from there, I think you can mark it down that Jackson Howard is going to be the starter in 2025 at that rush end position. Now, the depth in this defensive end room is very intriguing. It has a lot of upside in a very young room. So this is going to be a room that has upside for years and years to come. You talk about Jackson Howard, who's a redshirt freshman. You talk about Anthony Smith, who's a redshirt sophomore. But then on top of that, you've got Adam Kasai, who is a true freshman this year, who is long and lanky. He is super tall. He's got some bend to him, good speed. I think he just needs to put on some weight. Next year could be a big year for him. On top of that, Carter Menz, another guy who is kind of more slimmer frame, but has the speed, has the bend, has the quickness, has the burst. He's a guy who is a redshirt freshman, and maybe again 2025 could be a year where we start to see more of him. Sam Macy is a true freshman. I think he will probably redshirt this season and get used to things. Hayden Schwartz is a redshirt sophomore, and then Jalen Hicks is a true freshman. So you've got 3 true freshmen and a redshirt freshman, all in that depth that probably won't see the field in a defensive capacity this year, but the future is bright in this room, and it has a lot of potential and a lot of talent moving forward. So the dojo is strong here in Dinkytown. Now, next, we're going to break into the interior defensive line. Now, heading into the spring, this was a worry for me. This was a room I was very nervous about. We're going to talk about if those feelings still remain coming up next. First, I want to First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at the Ultimate Football Head Coach. It's the app that you need to download if you haven't already. Definitely take a moment to download it and have fun while you're at it, because look, I'm going to give you a moment of this new game that you're going to want to get into. If you love and have been obsessed with the NCAA 25 football game, you're on the stakes, you're always playing and whatnot. Well, this is that on the go, basically. And that is why I downloaded it, and I have loved it ever since. In this amazing game, you get a simulation and you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Golden Gophers? From recruiting players to hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling your school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program, and it's all in your hands. Can you handle the pressure? You can definitely find out today by downloading the Ultimate College Football Head Coach. It's completely free. It has no ads. That's a huge perk. And on top of that, it's 100% playable offline. You can play on the go and as you want, when you want. And of course, we have a special offer with Locked On Golden Gophers fans. You can use the promo code Locked On CFB. That's LOCKEDON CFB, all capitals, and inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk because it will get your team off to a strong start and get you playing for conference championships ASAP. Now, you can go and download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or you can look it up in the app stores at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. You can begin your coaching legacy today. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about that interior defensive line room. Now, this is a room I was worried about heading into the spring sessions of 2024. I thought it could be the weakest room. I thought it could be the most needed to add depth and what have you, but I feel like a lot of names have stepped up. Now, the main starter, the main guy, the dude I have been talking about since I came on this podcast in 2022 is Devin Eastern. He's a redshirt junior this upcoming season. He is playing at an elite level in camp. He is giving the offensive line problems. He is chirping. He has confidence. He has swagger. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder. He is blowing up the run game. He looks like a menace on the defensive line. He looks like he could be an absolute stud in the Big Ten, and he could be my favorite player on the defense with the level of breakout I believe he could have in this upcoming season. So Devin Eastern is a guy who can be an all Big Ten type player. I have full confidence in that. Many people might think I'm jumping the gun here, but I see it. I'm intrigued by it. He has the size. He has the intangibles. He has the drive. He has the confidence now with Coach Winston DeLatibadiere, and I think the sky is the limit for him. Now, his partner in crime last year, Kyler Baugh, no longer here, went with the Saints. He got waived, unfortunately, but he is no longer with the team. Logan-Redding stepping into that role, redshirt senior. He played both inside and outside last year on the defensive line, but I anticipate he's going to have a lot more interior play for this upcoming season. Now, if he can add a push up the middle and play with that Kyler Baugh role, this team should be in a similar spot with good upside in the personnel-wise on the defensive line. I think Logan-Redding has a ton of potential, and he had 3 sacks last year. So if he can continue to have that push from the center, you have those two big behemoths on the interior, and then you've got Josh Joyner and Danny Sherrill coming from the edges. That could be a scary defensive line for anybody when it comes to the starters. Now, I think when you look at it, our offensive line could truly be a top 5 unit in the Big Ten on an offensive line perspective. And this defensive line has been giving them troubles and work during the spring and the fall. So that could say a lot about this defensive line and the potential that they bring. So those two are the starters, but what is the rotation beyond that? Well, the rotation includes a lot of veteran experience. You've got Darnell Jeffries, a transfer from Clemson a few years ago. Now, last year, he lost the season to a torn ACL. Now, Minnesota will be hoping that Darnell Jeffries can offer a quality rotation snaps from this defensive line, and he brings consistency to the field. If he can add that to this interior defensive line, that will be more than enough to help them take a step in a positive direction when it comes to the defensive line and the pressure from the interior. Now, on top of that, you still got Logan Richter back as well. He is a 6-year player, another player that is more of a stopgap and a plug and play for the defense, especially on the run defense. He can plug up the run. The hope is for consistency from both of these guys. If you can find consistency in the snaps that they bring to the field and make no mistakes when they are rotating in, that is something that Logan Richter has done and can continue to do moving forward. But if they do that, and then you have the upside of the starters, this defensive line could be a true strength for the Gophers moving forward. So I am extremely intrigued by that potential. but we have to see it realized. You can talk about hope, you can talk about potential all day, every day, but if you don't see it come under the lights on game day, well, it doesn't really matter. So hopefully this interior defensive line can show up and show out in this upcoming season. Now, the wild card with upside, if he can get on the field for me, is Theron Randall, redshirt freshman. He has seen some opportunities with the twos in the fall camp sessions. He has a huge reach. He could be, I think, Trill Carter, but maybe even a little bit better with longer reach and be more of a run stopper that this defense could use, especially last year's defense that could not stop a nosebleed as the season went on in the running game. Well, they're going to get a challenge right away in week 1 against a Doak Walker finalist in Omarion Hampton. Theron Randall, will he see the field in that game? I'm not sure in UNC, but if he doesn't in that game, I would be surprised if you don't see him get a couple of looks and opportunities in the next 2 versus Rhode Island and Nevada. So Theron Randall is my wild card with upside if he can get on the field. Now, the depth players that might not be able to see the field in 2024, Martin Owusu, redshirt freshman, I think he is going to be a leader and a staple for this team at some point in his career. It might be later in his career, but I like Martin Owusu and what he brings to this team. I just don't know if it's going to happen in 2024. Riley Sunrum, true freshman, top kid in North Dakota coming to the Gophers. He just joined the team in the fall camp for the first time, so I think he's got a lot of learning to do. He's going to continue to get stronger and what have you, but he could be a very bright piece for the future. You've got Luther McCoy, a redshirt junior, who has continued to do the dirty, gritty grind work, and I am very proud of what he has done and the flashes we see from him in practices and whatnot. Whether he can get on the field or not, he is one of those guys that you just enjoy, that he loves football and he puts in the time and the work and he gets his teammates better as well. And then finally, you've got Mosane, true freshman from Eden Prairie. He'll probably redshirt this season, but we can see what happens with him as he continues to progress and develop on this team. Now, the final name in that interior defensive line, I believe, is Jack Hawkinson, a walk-on redshirt junior, but he probably won't likely see any time this season on defense. He did contribute in 4 games last year, but it was on special teams. But you love to have the walk-on grind. They make the teammates better, and he has definitely done that over the course of his career. So shout out to all the walk-ons. I always want to give it a shout out on the show. But that's the interior defensive line. So the defensive line as a whole, I have a lot of hope for, but we're going to have to see it realized. And the first game of the year is going to be a great test. This 4th game of the year is going to be a great test. In fact, Nevada might be a great test in game 3. Nevada just played SMU and gave them a scare all the way through the 3rd quarter until SMU came back and won it in the 4th. But they showed with their new head coach coming from Texas, with all these transfer players coming in from power schools, Nevada's not going to be the same walkover team. And so the Gophers can't overlook that game as well. And I think it's going to be a big one for Minnesota. So overall, I'm encouraged by the defensive line. I am hopeful for the defensive line, but we have to see it realized on the field. Now, the final thing we're going to dive into today is the linebacker depth chart. You're going to hear about my favorite player on the defense heading into 2024. You're going to hear about the most important player for the Gophers defense heading into 2024, and then some. We're diving into that coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, first of all, I want to talk to you about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, because 5 Hour Energy is the thing that can just keep you going, give you that extra little bit to get things done. Now, when I am tasked with a to-do list, I got to hit the chores, I got to hit the yard work, I got to hit the, you name it, I'm taking a 5 Hour Energy because it fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work or do-it-yourself projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. And if you're like me, you're always going to want to get those large lists of projects done at the house, and you can get more motivation, more extra burst of energy when you take a 5 Hour Energy shot. So when you get your supplies for the project, do not forget to pick up the most essential item in a 5 Hour Energy shot. So definitely give that a look, and then you're going to want to tell me about it. Drop it in the comments below and tell me what you use 5 Hour Energy shots for, because we want to inspire creativity, but also to get the word of mouth going here with the Gophers fans. So I love 5 Hour Energy. You love 5 Hour Energy. Tell me about it more in the comments, but definitely get you one today. All right, Gophers fans, we are wrapping it up with the linebacker depth chart breakdown. Now, we got to start with the starters, and of course, the first starter we got to talk about is Cody Lindenberg, the heartbeat of the defense, coach on the field. I think a lot of the Gophers malfunctioning on defense last year stemmed from Cody Lindenberg being gone and injured. PJ Fleck has said so himself, but I don't think that's a convenient excuse. I think you could see that departure, that hole was missing for this team because you had young guys that weren't ready to take on the communication of the entire defense and the checks and the calls and what have you, but they got thrust into those roles and they had to be ready and they had to simplify, but at the same time, they were too far along to simplify, so it made everything a bit harder. So when Cody Lindenberg is healthy, he is a true difference maker. The Gophers tackle leader last year, I believe, had like 54 or 56 tackles on the year. Cody Lindenberg, who played in about 3.5 games on the season last year, had 31 tackles and a forced fumble in those 3.5 games. Can you imagine what his production would be if he was in a full 12, 13 game schedule at that starter level? We haven't been able to see that yet. In fact, in 2022, the year prior, he started a little over half the year, but he had 60 tackles and a sack. So we haven't even accounted for the extra production he could see as a full-time starter for a full season if healthy. I think the sky is the limit, but Cody Lindenberg is a guy who can be an NFL player hands down. It just all comes down to health, and hopefully he is fully healthy for this upcoming season. But the Gophers have some depth behind him now, experience behind him, having these younger guys having had to play. So you talk about all that, and it's good for the Gophers in the long run, but hopefully everyone can stay healthy this upcoming season. But that isn't talking about the leadership aspects they were missing from Cody last year on the field. That isn't talking about the energizer aspects that they were missing from Cody Lindenberg on the field. You can literally see the defense fired up, having a new swagger about him when Cody Lindenberg is on the field. So hopefully the Gophers can see him play 12 plus games this season and get the best of their defense. Now, the player that I am most intrigued by, if it isn't Devin Eastern, who we've already talked about today, is Maverick Baranowski heading into the season, because, man, I am telling y'all right now, Maverick Baranowski is going to have a massive year if healthy. Defenses are going to focus on guys like Cody Lindenberg. They're going to focus on guys like Josh Joyner, and rightfully so. But Maverick has played fast and confident with Coach Heatherman at the helm, and I think it's going to show itself this upcoming season. On top of the fact that he was thrown into the fire in his redshirt freshman year last year when Cody went down, it all clicked this offseason. He understands the speed he has to play with. He has a better feel for what it takes. And Heatherman wants to play fast and violent, and I think Maverick will fit that description to a T. Now, many Gophers fans would be surprised to know that the 4th highest graded Gopher in pass rush last year was, in fact, Maverick Baranowski, behind Josh Joyner, Anthony Smith, and Trayvon Jones. So get ready for the breakout, because Maverick Baranowski is going to make his name known in this defense moving forward in 2024. Now, let's talk about the rotation in the linebacker room. I think guys that are going to be on the field at some capacity, Tyler Stolsky. Now, I've been telling y'all since late 2022, I've been hearing good things about Tyler Stolsky, and he was showing out in the rover periods. And then last year, he got himself onto the field late in the season due to the injuries. And you know what? He found ways to contribute, especially in those final 3 games. He was on the field for a large chunk of the final 3 games. And in those games, he had 21 tackles and a sack, and he led the team in tackles in the bowl game. So that is definitely what you love to see from someone who was a walk-on, and see them close the year out like that. Now, I think he will definitely be in the rotation this season. It'll probably be with the twos and giving some of the guys a breather, but if he can be that effective in his moments on the field, he is a guy that can have upside for the future, but also be a critical player moving forward in this Gophers linebacker core that needed depth last season. Well, maybe he can answer the call in this rotation. Now, the next player in the rotation is Devin Williams. He has speed, and speed is an element that Coach Heatherman wants to play with. So you can definitely imagine that Devin Williams is going to be on the field. Now, he missed a lot of the spring due to an injury, but he was back in the fall. And although he might not be the starter to kick off the year, I absolutely believe he will be in the rotation and he will contribute. In fact, maybe it could be better for him not being a starter, because when he gets on the field, he could make more high impact plays with fresh legs and really fire off the ball. Maybe he's used as a bit more of a pass rusher. We'll see how Coach Heatherman uses him, but I think being a more sporadic rotational player could help him in the long run in making more impact plays. And I think overall he could be a very complimentary linebacker in this room. The final player in the rotation I think I want to mention is Derek LeCaptain. Coach Heatherman has mentioned LeCaptain this fall in his leadership, but he also talked about how he likes how he's putting it all together on the field. And if that continues, he could definitely find waves of opportunity, especially if injuries happen in the season. Now, the wild card with upside to if they get on the field is Matt Kingsbury. He was the lowest graded player on the defense last year, but what do you expect from a true freshman who gets thrown to the Wolves when he wasn't even expecting to play on the season? Now, that said, he was the second highest graded tackler on the team with Kerry Brown. They were tied for the second highest grade, only behind Tyler Nubin. So there was some positive light that shone through in a tough situation. If he can put it together, I think he could have some very high upside. He could get some play time under his belt and be one of those guys that has the experience then heading into his what would it be, redshirt sophomore year next year, where he could be a key guy in 2025 if he can get some time in 2024. And then finally, we talk about the depth. They might not see the field in 2024 from a defensive capacity, but some of these guys will be special teams guys and could be guys to step up in the future. The first one, Joey Gerlach. We've heard about him. He's played some of that nickel strong linebacker, but we haven't seen as much Sam linebacker there. We've seen a lot of nickel players in there, so I don't know if he'll find the field in that capacity, but I definitely think he'll be back on the special teams where I believe he had the block punt or the recover from the block punt last season. Mason Carrier is a true freshman. I think he'll redshirt this year unless he sees a lot of time as a special teams player, but he is a guy that is going to put his all on the field and on the line to contribute in whatever manner he can. I think he's a guy who could be a big time player for the Gophers in the linebacker room in the future, but in year one, we'll see what capacity. Alex Elliott, another player that comes from the class of 2023. He redshirted last year, and I think he probably sees sporadic time, maybe no time this upcoming season besides special teams, but he is a depth player that could maybe push in future years. And then Eli Mao, I believe both Eli Mao and I think Tyler Stolsky both were walk-on players. I believe both got scholarships this upcoming offseason, so I am excited by that. Eli Mao could find himself into the rotation. I think he's one of those guys that is on the cusp of next man up in the rotation standings, so he's a guy to keep an eye on, but overall, I'm not sure how much time he will see. And then finally, I always got to give love to the walk-ons, Drew Wilson, Jack Tinnen. But this linebacker room, a lot of people had concerns about it. A lot of people were like, well, what's the upside? I don't know. That could be a weakness for the Gophers. If Cody Lindenberg and Maverick Baranowski are playing at their finest, I think this linebacker room has a ton of potential. On top of that, Tyler Stolsky can be a solid player. Devin Williams has speed elements to him, and I think that's going to help a lot. But the wild card for me is Matt Kingsbury and how much he can contribute to this defense. But overall, I think they're in a solid spot. They might not be the shining star linebackers that we are used to seeing for the Gophers, but I think that they will hold their own and they will contribute very well in this upcoming season, better than what we saw from last year. Hopefully we can get it back on track. And Cody Lindbergh has the potential to be a star linebacker, an all-conference type linebacker. So hopefully he's healthy and he can show it. But I am very intrigued by the front seven of this Gophers team. Let me know your thoughts on these depth charts. Let me know your thoughts on players that you're excited about for this upcoming season. And it starts this week on Thursday. Now, what the rest of this week is going to look like tomorrow, we're going to talk a little North Carolina. We're also going to talk about the safeties and the cornerbacks, finishing up our series for the depth chart breakdowns. And then we're going to hopefully do a crossover episode with Locked On Tar Heels this week. We'll see if we can make that happen. But otherwise, we've got the predictions going with your boy Tristan Smanford. So be sure to hit subscribe. Be sure to subscribe over on any audio platforms on YouTube or what have you. Leave a 5-star review so others can find the show. But this is the show where we always continue to roll, and the season is officially here this week. Get ready to go. Roll the boat, Sky. My Go Gophers, as always, and please don't forget to hit subscribe.